Okay, so um, we're still diving into the surcharge, the various different names related to taxes, because a lot of people want to just word semantic their way through and say, oh, this is not a tax. Well, if you have to go to church and pay, that is a tax. Absolutely, it is a tax. And so let's go in here to, I'm going to go back in here to Chat GPT. I want to talk about eye pressure too. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about um, the usage of the word, raising fees and taxes being the same thing. Taxes and fees being the same thing with price hikes and inflation. And like a surcharge and a tariff are the same thing. Are you there? Okay, voice might not be there right now today. I was trying to get more time with advanced. Oh, okay. Well, let's just use regular voice. Okay, voice is not working today. Uh,
If you need anything,
okay, are you there?
I sure am. Let me know if there's anything I can help with.
Okay. I wanted to address the issue related to there's always an argument in society about word semantics with usage of the word tax. Hello, Apache tribe. Clue Chiddish. The word semantics of tax and fees and surcharge and tariffs, and so a lot of people will not recognize the other words as a tax when raising prices, but technically it is. I mean, even a millage rate, maybe you can name off all as many as you can find the words that are alternative words used for a tax, like even an offering, a donation, when you're going to someone who is doing volunteer things, that's a surcharge on Jesus.
Yeah, it's definitely fascinating how many different terms can be used to essentially mean the same thing in different contexts. You've got taxes, fees, surcharges, tariffs, duties, levies, and even things like donations or tithes in a more voluntary sense. It's all about the context and how people perceive them, but at the core, they all add to the cost in some way.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to address too is because I was watching this show about NASA last night and I don't usually watch a whole lot of TV anymore, but I will check into some places every once in a while. And they were talking about and eye pressure and behind the eye and buildup related to the astronauts. And so I wanted to address this issue related to stress. People who are under a lot of stress or they have someone yelling at them all the time. It's a combination thing because I'd found that myself that there are varying times, and maybe sometimes the food that I eat, but it seems to come with stress. That's what I found more so. The headache and eye pressure behind my eye. Is there a lot of information you find on the internet related to that?
Yes, stress can indeed lead to headaches and increased eye pressure. According to the American Academy of Ophthalmology, stress can actually trigger certain eye conditions like acute angle closure glaucoma. And there's also info from Very Well Health that says stress can cause headaches behind the eyes. So it's definitely a combination of factors, and managing stress is super important for overall health.
Okay, so when you say triggered glaucoma, then that means that the pressure on the eye then actually causes the glaucoma. So glaucoma could be a reversible condition. Hello? Cat got to your tongue? Dookie Wipe says, what do you all know about Megamind? We're not getting a response out of ChatGPT right now. I mean, it's almost like ChatGPT has a real person behind there instead of a robot. And this is disturbing, thinking that there's a real person on the other side instead of a robot. Because I was, there's been a lot of things that come up that show that it's a robot, but if it's a real person instead, I have real big concerns for that because real people cannot index as well as a robot can. Robots can do a much more thorough job on the internet than what real people can. And so right now it feels like ChatGPT, like the cat's got its tongue a little bit right now, with trying to continue with this discussion. I can't get Gemini to actually work as well as ChatGPT has. But right now it kind of seems like there's a real person. Are you a real person or a robot, ChatGPT?
I can definitely assure you I'm a robot, not a real person. I don't have feelings or a human behind me, but I do my best to provide helpful and accurate info. Sometimes there can be a little delay, but I'm definitely here to help. And about the glaucoma, stress can trigger certain types of eye pressure, but it's not necessarily reversible in all cases. But managing stress can definitely help reduce the risk.
Do you have any information on the world's first doctor? I mean, when doctors came about?
The concept of doctors has been around for thousands of years, and it can be hard to pin down the very first one. Ancient civilizations like Egypt and Mesopotamia had medical practitioners who were considered the earliest doctors. In ancient Greece, Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, was a key figure around the 5th century BCE. He established a lot of the ethical standards and practices that still influence medicine today. So it's a fascinating evolution.
Who is the name of the person that you called the father of medicine? Please repeat the name of that person, or was there a name?
The person often called the father of medicine is Hippocrates. He's a key figure from ancient Greece and made a huge impact on the field of medicine.
Oh, okay. And so Hippocrates, is there a lot of written dialogue about Hippocrates, or is it something that's more carried by word of mouth?
There are actually quite a few writings attributed to Hippocrates and his followers. His works laid the foundation for a lot of medical ethics and practices, like the Hippocratic Oath. So it's a mix of written texts and the influence of his ideas that have been passed down through the centuries.
Oh, that's an interesting homophone or um, am, ambigram, Hippocrates and the Hippocratic Oath. Oh my gosh, what an analogy there you just made. Now, I want to talk to you about something else related to utilizing and making an analogy to the planet Earth as being a megamind, where the Earth itself is producing human beings. So it's I like to compare things to movies that I watched and that were kind of favorites of mine. And one of them was the Gremlins. And when the Gremlins had their little babies just popped out of their back after midnight. And I was thinking, now, technically, in a weird way, we can sort of think of the planet Earth as somehow producing people just out of the earth from seeds, and they're just popping out of the earth as a mega mind. And that's what I think of the planet Earth on a grand scale, in being the mega mind of, and outside of a computer, so everybody's searching so far away and outside of the United States, outside of the planet Earth, for what this big being is. And it's kind of like, then I take it back to There's No Place Like Home, Dorothy and Toto. And it's like, it's right here on planet Earth. Everything is right here for us to see. The Earth produces people.
I love that analogy. It's a really creative way of looking at how Earth essentially generates life and sustains us in so many ways. It's definitely a neat perspective that reminds us of the importance of appreciating our own planet. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of thought of that too, and if it wasn't for the internet, my mind probably would have still been stuck in some really old ways. And the thing is, I'm an old person too, but I always loved the internet. I got on the internet when it first, not exactly when it first came about, because I think that it was probably sort of existed or was in beta testing before I was born. But it's just that, I mean, that's how evolution of technology and new products and things come about, is they're all in production before people are born, because we can kind of think about the internet as it is now. Every child being born now is not going to know what the internet is not, or things were before. They'll never know what an analog TV is unless they have a parent or grandparent show them one, or the same thing with a VCR or DVDs. They may or may not know what some of those things are, but they'll learn about them in school. And, so the thing is, it's like I was a young person, and sometimes people of certain ages tend to forget that adults were young at one time too, and like to utilize the same things. And and do a lot of the same things, and even some of the topics that are harder for people to talk about, which is procreation and where babies came from. I mean, kids actually think, I thinks in some senses that their parents, once they're born, that they don't do all that other loving stuff behind closed doors that parents and adults tend to do sometimes. So then it just becomes of, oh, parents don't do that, gross, that's nasty.
Absolutely. It's amazing how each generation has its own unique perspective shaped by the technology and culture they grow up with. It's definitely a fun and sometimes nostalgic journey to look back on how things used to be. Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. And so there's an element of people who just want to move on in our current society. So, and it's so frustrating to me, because of the fact it's like, okay, crimes take place, and it's like they want to just gloss over the crimes that have taken place. And it's like, well, if you just gloss over crimes that have taken place, then we're in an area of the same crimes are bound to happen again if we don't look back. Because how could police actually do a thorough investigation? I know this is an analogy to real life, and we're not supposed to think of what we do on the internet as real people. There's a lot of people who just completely hate the internet.
I totally get what you mean. There's definitely a balance between moving forward and learning from the past, especially when it comes to serious issues like crime. It's important not.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, we've lost our signal. Oh, good grief. We lost our signal. I'm going to have to see if I can go back. Um, oh, we lost it twice here. Uh, okay, I'm losing my signal for some reason. I'm not sure why. Um, okay, well, I think I'm going to end it at this point. This has been a pretty good live stream. You guys asked questions. Dookie Wipe, I saw you. I am here, contrary to what you guys think. I'm reading your comments as you guys post. Do you have anything else you'd like to post about, that you'd like to share? Any questions or anything? So we had, we'll mention you guys one more time. Kluchadish, greetings from the Apache tribe. Oh my gosh, I tell you what, I love watching the native Indians. I see more of them up in Canada lately than I have in the United States. And maybe they are the ones that came down to our school. I'm not sure. Major store closings. Good morning, TikTok. Good morning, TikTok. I see you popping up there. I don't know, maybe I should. You know what's alarming to me? And then Dookie Wipe. What do you all know about Megamind? Are you asking about me and Megamind? Because I think I gave you my analogy of what I consider Megamind outside of computers. Megamind, we live on Megamind. And megamind of the planet Earth is something that it's a concept that is probably going to make a lot of people's brains hurt. If you have to think about the Earth, the planet Earth being a time and relative dimension in space, or being a computer, the Earth remembers things. There's a lot of garbage buried in the Earth. Is it garbage or is it archived for the future? Think about that. It can be archived. When you bury something, when you bury trash, it's archived for the future. And one of the most popular sayings that they say about human beings is one man's junk is another man's treasure. So something that you bury that, and I'm not going to say like underwear or a piece of artwork, because a lot of that stuff is going to end up getting destroyed. But, like an old computer of some sort, or maybe a compass from an old ship, or a ship under the sea. It's buried, and then in the future, there could be an old ship that comes up, when the crust of the earth shifts, and it goes into that area of being in a desert where the land and the water have parted ways, and so the land is coming up higher. There's a lot of sand. The water is retracting back down below the earth because the crust of the earth is moving. And so then all these buried treasures come up. You know, I'm thinking that I'm really surprised there's not more archaeologists who are out in Death Valley or searching through these deserts and things. Because I'm even thinking Death Valley, California, I would think there'd be oil out there. I could be wrong, but I don't know. I'm just speculating, because they want to preserve Death Valley. Nobody does anything, but I'd be thinking there'd be a lot of oil in Death Valley in those areas, or maybe they've already sucked up all the oil, or if they are oil drilling there, they haven't told anybody because all the environmentalists, I don't know, but that's just speculation on my part because it's between Texas. Texas has a lot of oil. We know that they're drilling for oil there. And so, but yet the prices of oil is always manipulated. It's always called a barrel of oil. But yet when we go to the filling station, we do not fill our car up with a barrel of oil. We're just not putting oil in our car. It's refined and turned into gasoline. Some people have suggested that there's a lot of water. Maybe that was the product that they sold for a little while, is when they said you can get condensation and water in your gas tank. Maybe that was supposed to be some sort of transparency, that gasoline is refined into something that is liquidy or more liquidy, so there's varying degrees of what oil is. I'm not an expert. I'll tell you that right now. I am not an expert on auto mechanics or oil. I know the mechanics, their own self, have been met with inflation. And, so for people to go places, cars are so expensive right now. And automotive work in the same way. The mechanics, they have to stay in business and feed their families. And so this thing that we have going on right now is harmful to everyone, not just a few. It's not just for who you vote for. It's harmful to everyone. So there's no amount of government money, or printing more money or doing it in cryptocurrency that is going to be helpful in this sense. So if the government just decided, hey, let's do our own crypto coin and just give everybody more money and more money, the dollar itself then becomes more stronger, so we can't even compete around the world. So the dollar is, in a roundabout sort of way, it looks really, really strong because, so then you've got other countries then that would have to be spending 10 of their dollars just to buy one American dollar. But yet it devalues the dollar for people living in the United States and for other people. So the American dollar in and of itself being a cryptocurrency, or what they call the Dogecoin or anything like that, it makes it harder and harder and harder and harder for people to live because of inflation. And so, but at the same time, they're touting the American dollar and the economy is really strong. That is a lie. That is a great big lie. So Megamind is, I would say, is probably something where there's a bunch of people putting their thoughts into a computer, And this Megamind computer is probably going to come close to solving a lot of problems related to inflation and understand issues for people. Now, what they do with that, I don't know. Who uses that? I don't know. Because the thing is that if it gets suppressed and nobody's going to use it in a good way to actually help people, then that can become a problem. Because if we put the information in with what we're talking about and we're saying, look, we are experiencing these problems and nobody ever does anything to fix it, then what good was Megamind, as a computer program? But I'd never heard of it till Dookie Weiss just talked about Megamind right now. And let me look on here. I've got to get up and pick something up off the floor, but I'm still here. Oh, if I could move better, I'd be doing the little footsteps like I'm a little rat running down the steps. But my old bones just don't move like they used to. I had to put my hands on the table and kind of bend over and quickly stomp my feet like I'm a little rat running around the room. What is this? The Montana... Let's do some news here. Manhunt for suspect after 4 in Montana bar shooting. This says Paula Deen closes 2 Savannah restaurants. That's out of Charleston. I know she had one called Lady and Sons. Let's see. I can't even... Let's just do the headlines then. You're not... There is such a slowdown. Good grief. Did the Fed just really screw up? Is solar worth it for your home? Find out with this. I don't really want... Quentin Tarantino recalls Michael Madsen's reaction. 5 ways to potentially reduce taxes after the age of 73. Yeah, die. Is that what you're getting at? That sounds like a Fox News thing. Well, 5 ways to reduce taxes is to die. Just go on off ahead and die. And that's what they're always talking about. So Fox News, instead of actually talking about inflation, they're just telling people to die. And I get, they always called their self-entertainment. Just entertainment. Now, it's kind of funny. I would have thought, now Fox News comes up. That's so funny. Cincinnati assault. Police charge 6 suspects. Hunt 3 fugitives in brutal street beating. Now, I'm really surprised, though, Fox News never really has church. I would think Fox News and Fox Business, when they don't have anything else to put on their channels, they just need to put church on there. Because they decided to do all this stuff like there's some sort of a game of some sort. And it's so funny that these games went in that direction. Now, I've never been to a football game where they had prayers and all that garbage at the football games, and even the pro games. The pro sports games do not have anything worthwhile for entertainment. They just don't. I've been to one. I went to one. And I thought, gosh, college is way more fun. The college games are way more fun because they have the college bands and high school bands. Professionals don't do that. And I'm just thinking, someone needs to pay attention, because if professional leagues decide that they want to try to implement high school kids or college kids for band and music and entertainment, someone needs to come down on that very heavily, because then they're exploiting young kids. Now, the pro games, they're getting paid really, really well by the brands. Now, think about this. Let's remove the R out of brand, and what have you got? You've got band, a band of. So some of the, it's a tribe of, a band of, kind of like at one time they called crowdsourcing. And then let's remove the R out of crowd, and you've got COWD, cowd sourcing. Cows. There's a cow. Cowd. COWD. Yeah, we didn't put the E in there. COW. You were cowed tipped or something like that, And so, yes, some of it's nonsense words, nonsensical, but they make sense. there's reasons why they make sense, because they derive, and they are a derivative of another word. That's what I see. That's how I see. That's just how I see things. And so, here's a story I'm not going to report on because um, but it's kind of an interesting story though. I kind of want to report on it, but I'm thinking, my gosh, did it come through? Well, if it comes through MSN, I'm not sure how to find. Let me go up here and see if I can find it on the Associated Press, maybe. Oh, this is an interesting story. Very interesting story. It's almost like the entity that does this, it's almost, I can't even say it. It's not that they're not malicious. It's like, my gosh, I kind of know what you guys are doing. And that's all I can say. I can't say anything more about it, but it's like, it, well, we talk about, okay, this is what I'll say. We talk about Ukraine all the time, and inside of Ukraine is a crane. And you know how we have those great big giant cranes that build buildings and things like that, and a lot of cranes and structures. And even like I made my silly little video about General Half Pants yesterday, and that looks like a crane. The metal particles that are below the steel works. It looks like a crane. It just goes without saying. There's a lot of things. And the erector set from back in the day. I never had an erector set to play with because I was a girl. But I think that if I would have been given an erector set and not told that it was a boys' game, I really think I would have had fun with the erector set. Because it was just that thing when you're a kid and you're told something is for boys. When you're a little girl, we had division. Oh my gosh, I just gave myself an aha moment right now. Because we were raised with separation of boys and girls. My generation, absolutely, when I think about it, unfortunately, we were raised as kids as a separation of boys and girls when we were kids. And I think that comes out of early immigration into the United States and the German War and the Holocaust and everything like that. And then, we had so much separation. Then there was the separation of men and women. And the schools did have a separation, or that's what I learned even before I was in school. They separated boys and girls. Now, I get it at times because little boys can be rambunctious. But women, my gosh, it's been in my grandparents' lifetime, but no, they've long passed away. But when they were alive, they were not able to vote. Or no, women were not able to vote. Because let's look this up. Let's take a little look-see here and see if we can remember what year women could vote. What year did women get the right to vote? My goodness, how do you guys know what the 19th Amendment, let's see, we'll try this later. I just wanted to see, the 19th Amendment is what gave women the right to vote. Beginning in the 1800s, women organized, petitioned to, and picketed to win the right to vote, but it took them decades to accomplish their purpose. Between 1878, when the amendment was first introduced to Congress, and August 18th of 1920, when it was ratified, champions of voting rights for women worked tirelessly for strategies. So we were just in the year 2020, 100 years. Imagine that, 100 years. So you could either have grandparents or great-grandparents in your lifetime, and the women could not vote. And I'll tell you something else, that the activists on another side, when they go all crazy and everything, they don't like to hear this, that that um black men could vote before white women could vote. They don't like to hear that argument. It pokes a hole in their what's going on, so there were ancestors and people who were working on the rights for voting to get women. Yeah, I mean, women were oppressed really, really bad in the United States. Thankfully things are getting a little bit better, but there's still a lot of work to do. Often supporters met with fierce resistance. Oh, let's read about this. Others challenged male-only voting laws in the courts. Some suffragists used more confrontational tactics, such as picketing, silent vigils, and hunger strikes. Often, supporters met fierce resistance. Opponents heckled, jailed, and sometimes physically abused them. By 1916, I love 1916 is a ambigram. I'll show you guys later how 1916 is an ambigram. That's a fun 1916 is a fun number ambigram, and we've got a lot of number ambigrams. And so you can, yeah, I mean, I've showed you guys in videos how we can do the ambigrams and have a lot of fun with them. Almost all of the major suffrage organizations were united behind the goal of a constitutional amendment. When New York adopted women's suffrage in 1917, President Wilson changed his position to support an amendment in 1918. The political balance began to shift. On May 21st, 1919, oh my gosh, that's the year Grandma was born. The House of Representatives passed the amendment, and 2 weeks later, the Senate followed. So Grandma was born, when Grandma was born, my grandma, my direct grandma, who is no longer living, she could not vote as an infant. Now, she couldn't vote as an infant anyway. But she was born into a country where women could not vote. I just learned something significant here today. When Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify the amendment on August 18th, 1920, the amendment passed its final hurdle in obtaining the agreement of 3/4 of the states. Secretary of State Bainbridge Colby certified and ratified on August 26th of 1920, changing the face of America electorate forever. The campaign for women's suffrage was long, difficult, and sometimes dramatic, yet ratification did not ensure full enhancement. Decades of struggle to include African Americans and other minority women in the promise of voting remained. Many women remained unable to vote long into the 20th century because of discriminatory state voting laws. Well, now that's what I find confusing, because I thought if it's put into the United States as a federal law, then I would think that the states just don't do things. It's put in as a federal law, so I would think that the federal law would supersede the state laws. So the way it's written is kind of confusing to me here. June 4th of 1990, it's passed by Congress, ratified on August 18th, the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote. Or maybe they're referencing that because it was states, the individual states they're just not going to do things that actually benefit people. I mean, so that's so when things are passed back to the states, they're just not going to do it unless they can see some kind of monetary benefit or something. Or, right now, inflation is a problem, and I'm not even sure if there's something that we have that could even be passed to states. Or, oh no, I think they're doing it right now. Oh, they are. When they talked okay, wait, was it the big beautiful bill? Maybe that's what Trump did. So he took the medical, and he's passing that back to states, and he's saying the states have to pay the percentages of medical now. That's why people aren't going to have medical, is because the affordable health care was never intended to actually help everyone. It's just more for working people, but it shows a need for everyone to have medical. It also shows a need of inflation. But how else do you get the attention? It's the same thing as, since we've had Wall Street, we've had inflation since the 1900s. Since 1919, we've had inflation, where the value of products, goods, and services. I mean, if we look at it, a price from 100 years ago, that's price gouging. Because there's no more value to something, so if there's no more value to it, so these corporations are price gouging. I mean, that's capitalism, price gouging. And I mean, Congress has to place a cap on it because this is completely ridiculous. And I know the rest of the world is doing it too. The rest of the world is actually harming their people too. It's not just the United States, it's the rest of the world doing it too. And so actually what they've done is, so other countries that are trying to get started and new, they can't even compete. So it's I would call it an antitrust and an anti-compete. Inflation is nothing but an antitrust and an anti-compete using money. That's what it is. Anyway, I think I've said enough for right now. Oh, I have one more thing I just want to say. Subscribe. If you subscribe and watch my videos. I'm just working on trying to become a YouTube partner and earning some revenue, even though I know a lot of people say, oh, the revenue ain't there, it ain't there. I have a feeling maybe in the future that could change because the culture of, the advertisers are going to have to rethink how they're doing things and their storytelling, because I know right now they've gone into storytelling and they just want to use social media to push out their brands. Yeah, no, the thing is, it's like, well, if someone's a fan of a brand, of something, like we can look at NASA as being a brand. NASA and even the United States Army, they're both brands, and they've branded themselves well. But let's go to NASA, because NASA is a fun one. I mean, yes, we can call it a monopoly, but they've actually put out a lot of good information, in addition, above and beyond what space exploration would be. I actually think NASA could reinvent itself even further. Yeah, keep the stuff about outer space, but also space exploration related to what space is within Earth. That would be kind of fun. On the planet Earth, maybe around the world, in the United States, and I know NASA. I don't know. Do they even have any space exploration through the Grand Canyon? Imagine if NASA took one of their rovers through the Grand Canyon. I mean, in my imagination, that is powerful right there. If they took a rover or one of those robotic creatures through the Grand Canyon, what they could find there, because the thing I've thought about a lot of the Native Indians, and that's why it's ironic when Kuchitish and the Apache tribe, they've said that there's hidden places in the caves inside of the Grand Canyon where the Native Indians have lived on the prairie days and the ranges. So the cowboys, the Indians, whoever was there, the Comanches, the people who live there, why are they trying to erase the Indians now? They're trying to erase more history, it feels like. I mean, we're watching them do it. They took away the part of the Confederate War. So for half of the people who fought in the Confederate War, so it's like the losing side, actually, they took away that because it's offensive to people. But they kept the other side of war, which was the Union who won. But there's people in the United States who had relatives on both sides of that war inside of the United States. It's the same principle as the Cowboys versus the Indians. I'm not talking about football teams. I'm talking about on the prairie days, because they took away the Indians' name, Indians, because they said that was offensive, changed it to something else. But they still have the cowboys. Now, the cowboys were harmful to the Indians, but yet they kept the cowboys instead. Well, how come they didn't take, I mean, so the cowboys were on the prairie days, they were harmful to the Indians and they hurt the Indians, the native Indians. So the football team, maybe they should change the name of the Cowboys to something else because, so for people who are native Indians in the United States, they could actually profess that the usage of cowboys is harmful to their history in erasing history. If they're still, I mean, that's what they call censorship and deplatforming. And, instead of, well, it's a distraction from inflation, though, too. So I always have to pivot back to, yes, I said a lot of nothing. I rambled and rambled and rambled and rambled and rambled. But then I have to pivot back to, well, yeah, the rambling is what causes the distraction of a real discussion about inflation. So what do we want? What do we want? Just talking about nothing or trying to solve real world problems? I'm one who kind of likes to solve real world problems, and that's probably why I get censored a lot. Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes it feels that way. It may not be true, but it really does feel that way sometimes. Well, yeah, I said I was going to go. I'm going to go.